Hello, my name is Sandra James, and I would like to tell you about an exceptional young man, Matthew Axelson, who was born and grew up in Cupertino. Matthew gave his life in the service of the United States in June 2005 while on an operation with a Navy SEAL unit in the rugged mountains of Afghanistan. In the next half hour, you will meet his parents, Donna and Corky Axelsson, and I also want to tell you about Matthew and how his death became the catalyst that brought the citizens of Cupertino together to recognize Matthew's sacrifice and the decision to build a veterans memorial to all those who have served this nation. Please stay tuned.
Welcome to The Better Part, a program by and for seniors and devoted to exploring the many facets of those better years of our lives. The name of our program is inspired by a quotation from Robert Browning. "Grow old along with me, the best is yet to be, the last of life for which the first was made." Now, sit back and enjoy a program made especially to provide seniors with useful information, plus some lighter moments to brighten your day.
And our guests today are Donna and Corky Axelsson, the parents of Matthew Axelsson, a Navy SEAL who was killed in Afghanistan in 2005. I've known Donna and Corky for a long time. Donna is a resource teacher for the Cupertino Union School District for how many years, Donna?
I've taught in the district for about 22, and I've been the technology resource teacher. This is my second year doing that.
Well, welcome, and why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself before we start the program so the audience can get to know you and Corky a little bit.
Well, thank you. We're pleased to be here. And we're always happy to talk about Matthew and his life, and we're particularly excited about this project that is underway as a result of his death.
Okay.
Well, it is nice to be here, and you know, talking about Matt is something we enjoy doing, but it's often difficult, as you can probably tell. This is something real special, and it's much bigger than Matt, but really how it started with Matt's life is pretty special.
I'd like to start first by reading to you the award of the Navy Cross to Matthew Axelsson. That is the second highest award that the United States Navy gives, second only to the Congressional Medal of Honor, and not very many people have been awarded this. The Navy Cross was awarded to Matthew Axelsson, United States Navy SEAL, for extraordinary heroism in action against the enemy while serving in a 4-man Navy SEAL reconnaissance team operating in enemy-controlled territory in the extremely rugged terrain of Konar province in eastern Afghanistan. The team was tasked with locating a high-level Taliban leader in support of a direct action mission to disrupt enemy activity in that area. On 28th of June 2005, Afghan sympathizers revealed the team's position to numerically superior Taliban fighters who engaged the team in a firefight. The ensuing engagement resulted in enemy personnel being killed and several members of the Navy SEAL team being wounded. Ignoring his own injuries and demonstrating exceptional composure, Matthew Axelsson told the teammate closest to him to escape while he provided cover fire. With total disregard for his own life and thinking only of his teammates' survival, Matthew continued to fire and eliminate additional Taliban fighters until mortally wounded himself. Matthew will be remembered for his undaunted courage, fortitude under fire, and unwavering dedication to duty. What I'd like you to do for our audience is to provide for them a picture of who Matthew was as he grew up and how he came to the point in his life where he decided to be a Navy SEAL. Donna, would you like to start? Why don't you introduce the young Matthew to us?
From right when we first brought him home, probably the word that I would use to describe him would be strong-willed. Here he was coming into a family with an older brother and a mom and a dad, and we had a routine. Well, his awake time was 6 at night to 2 in the morning. And I tried everything I could to change his schedule so that it would fit in with the families. And nothing I tried.
So he had his own way of doing things from the very
he did.
beginning, you would
He
say.
did.
What are the highlights that you remember about Matthew as he grew up and went to school that as you think back over his life, that are prominent for you and for you too, Corky?
One of the things I just really remember is his fondness of being active. He was always out running around, playing games, riding his bike, the scooter, the skateboard. I mean, always doing something. But he really liked his quiet time too. Sometimes he'd just go in his room and read and shut the door, and that's where he would be. So I guess I'd say when it was time to play, he wanted to play. When it was time to be quiet and reflect, then he could do that too.
And his relationship with his brother, Jeff?
Oh, he had a real strong relationship with Jeff. One of the earliest stories that I love to tell about the two of them is in our backyard in Cupertino. We always had a garden as the boys were growing up, and so we grew vegetables and planted seasonal flowers. So they were playing outside one day, and all of a sudden I heard Matthew just screaming and crying, and I went racing outside, and he was drenched from head to toe. And Jeff was standing there with a watering can. So it was obvious what had happened. So I was angry, and I said to Jeff, "Get into your room and I will be there." And Jeff went into his room, and I got Matthew dried off and calmed down and everything. And then I went in to see Jeff, angry that he had done this to his brother. And when I said to him, "Why in the world did you do that?" And he said, "I just wanted to make him grow."
And they were close enough together, a couple, 2.5 years, I guess, but when they grew up, they were close friends, which means all their friends became close friends. So it was a very large group of boys, basically, and girls when they got older, of course, but that grew up together and just loved to be together. Our house was like like the local place where they'd all hang out. So we got to know their friends very well, too.
And it seems like the trait of as a group, having a partner, supporting and protecting your friends, then that was something that was also part of Matthew's personality as he was growing up. And obviously when you joined the Navy SEALs, and we'll talk a little bit more about that too, that's a big part of the SEALs, is that you're always with a partner and you're always part of a team, and you depend on that team for your life, obviously.
Yeah.
Tell me, I know that you are a very faith-based family, and that your faith is a big part of your life, and therefore obviously was a big part of Matthew's life. How do you think that affected Matthew becoming the type of young man he became and the decision he ultimately made?
One of the things that the First Baptist Youth Group did was go on mission trips. They would, in April during spring break, they would go on something called Mad Week, Make a Difference. And then in the summer, they would always do some kind of project. So he was able to travel to Canada, to Mexico, to various places throughout California, and do service to help other people. So he learned early on that it was important to give back, and that's the reason he joined the SEALs, was to give back.
How did you feel about that, and what did you say to him?
Well, I guess when I was in the service, my prayer was always that my children would never have to go through this.
You were in the Vietnam War?
Yeah. Jeff and Matt were both very physical. They loved to work out. Our garage was like a gym, so they did a lot of exercising together. And because they had, knew about the body, the muscles, and all those kinds of things, I mean, working out and then hearing about the SEALs and the exercise plan they went through, they just started doing it. I mean, everyone's heard of the SEALs and how, what a unique organization that is, and not just anybody can walk into that. So.
One of the young men in the youth group at our church had been in the SEALs. And so both Jeff and Matt had grown up with Ross. So when he went into the SEALs, they continued to see him when he came home on leave. Then when Matthew went to San Diego to go to school, he did 4 years in Chico, and then he went down to San Diego to focus on political science. And one of the roommates at the house was a teammate of Ross's who was still active duty Navy. So they would talk with Chris in the evenings and when he would be around. So their interest in the SEALs was continually growing. And as Corky mentioned, both of them together started training because Jeff also considered going into the SEALs.
So now we're to the point where it's becoming serious, and he's in San Diego, and he really has decided he wants to look into this. Now, I know that those of us pretty much know that little bit about the SEALs, but you know more about it than we do. And as you lived through Matthew's enlistment, acceptance, his training, talk to us a little bit about what that was like and what you learned in the process of what he was doing and what his life was going to be like.
He left for basic training December 28th, 2000. And you mentioned it was...
Yeah, that morning, you know, he was, the recruiter or whatever is going to pick him up early in the morning, of course, and we were down there. So he says, I don't want you to come out with me. I don't even want you looking out the window. You know, I just...
Don't embarrass me, Mom and Dad, right?
Don't embarrass me, Mom and Dad. You know, so when, you know, the knock came at the door, he just walked out and got in the car like he had done it 100 times and drove away.
But he never liked to be the center of attention.
That's true.
So, and I think also that he knew he was going away from his family. It was like at his wedding when I danced with him. He said, Mom, don't cry, because then I will. So I think it was the same kind of thing, that he was leaving his family, and it would have been harder for him if we'd been there giving him a hug and seeing him out the door.
Of course. So the training took place in San Diego?
Yes.
And how long was that training?
The SEAL training is called BUDS, Basic Underwater Demolition SEALs. And it's after you've gone through basic training for the Navy. You have to qualify in basic training to go to the SEALs BUDS training. So once that starts, it's 7 months of intensive training. There are 3 phases. The first phase is just a physical training phase where they do a lot of obstacle course work, running, getting them in shape, because it's during that first phase that the infamous Hell Week occurs. And at the end of Hell Week, you still have months and months of training, but it's at the end of Hell Week that you do a graduation, because they figure that most of the men, if you can make it through Hell Week, that you probably will qualify for SEALs. They started Hell Week with 172 men, and 55 graduated.
Wow.
Because it's not just physical, but it's also mental toughness.
I'm sure it
Yeah,
is.
it stresses the whole thing out. I remember when the captain was giving the speech at the graduation, he said, you've proved you're tough enough. The rest of your training will prove if you're good enough.
Oh, and then when he became a SEAL, he's frequently gone on missions that you know nothing about. And then came this ultimate mission in Afghanistan. Did you know he was going on a mission when he left for that?
For Afghanistan?
Uh-huh.
Oh, yeah. Well, he originally, we thought, and he thought, he says, I don't know really, you know, can't tell you where I'm going, but I think it's probably Iraq. And his team actually went to Bahrain, I think, first, and then they were split up where half of them went to Afghanistan and half stayed in, or went to Iraq.
It's interesting because a SEAL often is thought of as a water creature. And Matthew's specialty was SEAL delivery vehicle, which is a small submarine that's wet, meaning when you're inside it, you're in all of your gear. It's not dry, it's wet. And that was his specialty. And here he died, and the teammates died high in the mountains of Afghanistan. But the thing is that SEALs stand for sea, air, and land. So he had a lot of training. I mean, he jumped out of, I think it's called haloing. He jumped out of airplanes at 30,000 feet. lots of land navigation that he had to learn, as well as underwater navigation. But the training that he went through, Corky always joked, Corky during Vietnam was in the Army for 1 year.
9 months and 10 days.
And Matthew's training before he ever was deployed was years. So he had more training. So the
More
SEALs...
training than I had during my whole service experience.
When the mission failed, when they were discovered, they did not find Matthew right away. There were a couple of weeks when they didn't really know where he was until the body was recovered. And I do know that his partner was part of the helicopter that went in to rescue him, James Suh, who we'll talk about when we talk about the Veterans Memorial, who also perished. But let's go then to what happened and how you felt. How did you handle that time when you did not know, and then when you found out that Matthew had sacrificed his life for one of his teammates?
Well, when he first went over there and he went to Afghanistan, which we found out about, we felt slightly relieved because we figured Afghanistan was probably a safer place from where most of the soldiers are today.
I would get letters from him. But Matthew had access to email, so we would hear from him regularly with email. I think he emailed his wife Cindy, you know, every day he was on base. He could phone us, so we had heard from him the Monday after Father's Day, which is a week before the mission, to just talk to him. And the interesting thing with Matthew, and I think with all SEALs, is I would just be chatty with him, but his dad would say, "So what are you doing really?" And Matthew always said, "I'm working." And his dad would say, "Well, what does that mean?" He said, "I'm doing all the things I've been trained to do."
I know when the community found out and the nation found out about Matthew's sacrifice and the death of himself and his team, you received a lot of help and support and some very moving tributes. And I wonder if you could explain this feather that's sitting on the table here and tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I think I'd just like to read part of the letter that we received from the Whitehorse family.
And the Whitehorse
I'm going to let Donna tell you a little bit about the Whitehorse family.
Thank you.
Before I start to read it.
One of the women that I worked with in the Cupertino School District, Sylvia McAmer, has a Native American heritage, and her eldest daughter married into the Whitehorse family. And when they heard about Matthew's death, they sent us this eagle feather and this letter explaining about the eagle feather.
Would you like to read that for us, Corky?
Yeah. This is to the Axelsson family. The bald eagle was chosen on the 20th of June, 1782, as an emblem of the United States of America because of its long life, great strength, and majestic look. But long before 1782, most Native American tribes used the eagle's feather as a symbol of bravery and freedom. Today, this practice of honoring great warriors with the tail feather of the eagle continues in our traditions. Our family would like to honor Matthew as one of these great warriors. Matthew's truly selfless act must be recognized. Please accept this feather with pride and reverence. Love, the Whitehorse family.
That's absolutely wonderful. I happen to know Sylvia McAmer. She was one of the best special education teachers I think the Cupertino School District ever had. That's a wonderful tribute, and I think her letter helps us go right into what we want to talk about in the second half of this program, which is the Veterans Memorial that you are working on, and I'm working with you on, that will be erected in Cupertino Memorial Park. So I think to start with, I'd like to go back to that City Council meeting, which you know the date better than I do, was
August 16th, 2005.
And I actually was on the City Council at that time, and that was when Tony Banderman came, and the two of you came to the City Council, and if my memory is correct, simply asked to place a plaque either in the Cupertino Library or in Memorial Park honoring Matthew as a Monte Vista High School graduate and a resident of Cupertino. So why don't we take a look at a clip we have from that City Council meeting.
Our nation and our community lost a great, great hero, Navy SEAL Matthew Axelson. He was a former Cupertino resident and graduated in high school, local high school. And since then, the news got out. I have received, the council members received floods of letters expressing their concern and their condolences to the families. And in addition, there were some suggestions about setting up some memorial, in memory for somebody who died for our country in protection of our freedom.
I think it'd be wonderful to have some type of freestanding memorial, be it a plaque or a statue or something, in a very public place, because this gentleman was so very well known, and his family as well, so very well known in the area. And so I think this is something right now that hits home with all of us. And
Good evening. Just a proud dad, I guess, but it would be a big honor for our military folks, and of course the Navy SEALs, and of course for men. And anything that would be really good.
First of all, I just want to acknowledge Donna Axelsson and her husband and her wonderful son, Matt. I've known Donna for a very long time. In fact, Donna is one of those wonderful teachers that has taught in the Cupertino School District for how many years now? 20. Her son was a reflection of both his mom and his dad. The place to start is with the Parks and Rec Commission. I think it's a worthwhile suggestion. I thank our mayor for thinking of it.
It'd be a good project for both the Arts Commission and the Parks and Rec Commission to work on together, because the design of whatever the structure is that we have would eventually be run through the Arts Commission.
Memorial Park right now you don't get the feeling that it's about veterans now. It's, I think it's, the current plaque is very low key. So I would ask for something fairly prominent here, especially if we're going to have the names of our citizens on it. So I like everything that's been said. I think the Parks and Rec Commission ought to put some time into this and make something that's visually impacting in Memorial Park.
When I retired from the City Council, I offered to co-chair with Donna and Corky the effort to build this memorial in the city of Cupertino. So briefly, let me explain it to the audience, and then we'll talk a little bit about it. It's a three-part memorial that has a statue right here, which is of Matthew and James Suh. And I'm going to ask you to talk a little bit about this, but just let me briefly tell everybody what we're talking about here. This is the flagpole that's in Cupertino in Memorial Park, and this site goes from the flagpole all the way back to a parking lot back here. This is a wall of honor, which is a granite wall which will list anybody who lived in the Cupertino area, graduated from Cupertino High School or Fremont Union High School, or De Anza College, that died in military service. The Walk of Honor, and Walk of Remembrance, excuse me, the Walk of Remembrance. And I think it'll be very moving to walk through here. Some of them now we have someone who was at D-Day, somebody who was at Pearl Harbor, people from Vietnam and the Korean War, and their stories are told on these pavers, this Walk of Remembrance. It's something that will actually tell you what Memorial Park is about, when in the past all that community's had is a flagpole. So how did this get started?
After we buried Matthew, my brother passed away the next day. It was a sudden illness, and we felt we needed, this was in July. We buried Matthew on July 21st, and my brother died on July 22nd, and we felt we needed to get away. So we'd never been to Sedona, and we thought that would be a place where we could just have a quiet time. We came across a gallery for a sculptor named W. Stanley Proctor, and we loved his work. He did bronze work of people, animals, those kinds of things. And there was one in front of his studio of an elderly gentleman sitting on the bench, and it was called Poppies, and it was a World War II memorial that we were impressed with. That's how we found the sculptor. When Therese Smith, the director of Parks and Rec, asked if Corky and I would like to be involved in the project in November of 2005, we said we would be honored to be involved, and we suggested that they might want to consider Sandy Proctor for this. Sandy Proctor likes to use real people, and he asked us if we would mind if he used Matthew. We said that would be lovely. And he wanted to use 2 people, and it just seemed logical since the SEALs represent all, they're part of Special Forces, and Special Forces is an umbrella that encompasses all branches of the service. And the SEALs particularly, if people talk about them, they often talk about the teams because they always work in pairs. And James was Matthew's teammate. So if you're going to have 2 people, and Matthew is going to be one of them, logically James would be the other one.
Where are you in the process now with the memorial? How far along have you gotten, and when are you expecting to finish or dedicate it?
We've set a dedication date for this year, Veterans Day, Sunday, November 11th. The Rear Admiral in charge of Naval Special Warfare has already agreed to speak. We're in the process of putting the program together.
I know you have a website that people can check with to get any information they want. If you want to give that website, please feel free to do that.
www. all one word, CupertinoVeteransMemorial.org.
Thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you for having us.
The Better Part welcomes your ideas for topics for future programs. They can be reached by calling the Cupertino Senior Center. The number is 408-777-3150. That's 408-777-3150. You can also learn more about the Better Part at their website, www.alloneword.thebetterpart.com. That's www.thebetterpart.com. Thank you for watching, and goodbye till next week.